Welcome back. This is After the Ashes, the beautiful Altadena podcast, breaking down legislation and recovery after the Eaton Fire. This is your co-host, Shauna, here. This is episode 18. 1 year later, journalists are writing the first draft of history. And yes, we know what the date is. And no, it's not quite 1 year. But this is when everyone's writing their stories, right, Steve?
Yeah, we're starting to get to that point. I think a lot of people are, as we have been, and we've been talking about in dribs and drabs, and I think we're going to just take it on head on here, asking the questions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, I've been asked it numerous times by multiple electeds and other folks. So I think the question people have been asking us, I know, Shauna, you've been pinged and I've been pinged, is, as we're looking at the coming up on the year and what we're seeing and what is it going to look like? And so, we were thinking about it and we felt like, why don't we just kind of put it out there and put out some questions and kind of start discussing it and prompt it so whoever is a journalist listening to this, they can start to pick which areas they want to go at. Because some of it's national. Mm-hmm. And, there are people out there that are journalists that are going to look at this from a national perspective. Some of it's statewide. There are people that address California specific, but, at a state level and a Sacramento policy level. And then there are people at like the LA Times that have kind of bridged both worlds and maybe even the Pasadena Star News that, they want to see things from a very much a local lens. And, we talk a lot about the local lens. And so, the idea here, as I see it, and the reason why I started the Substack, one of the reasons was we talked that line, journalism is the first draft of history, comes from the newspaper industry, right? And that is that first retelling of the story and shaping the narrative. And, it's a primary source, as historians know. They go to the newspapers and other primary sources first. But what I figured is, Substack was really like a rough draft of the first draft. I mean, and I joke about it because my grammar sucks and my spelling
Your grammar
is
doesn't
horrible.
suck.
It does.
You just drop things, train of thought and rapidly, which is, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of edit when you are posting multiple times a day.
Well, and again, I try not to, but there's just a lot happening.
There is.
And, but the idea was that we would give that rough draft so that the journalists and the media would be able to pick up that rough draft and use that rough draft to start to shape their drafts.
Yep.
So, at this point, we're a year in, and being the historian that I am, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I look at things from a historical perspective. And, I feel like history is so critical to this because we are writing it in real time. And we've had a lot of folks that have come in, and Shawnee, you've had a lot of conversations with people who have, post-disasters, Paradise, Lahaina, and other disaster areas. And they've given us their experiences to help us move faster or move more efficiently or be able to have the right ask.
To warn us of challenges that they've encountered and
bad
actors and all these other
And maybe
things.
we haven't been able to forestall all of those things, but being forewarned, being foretold is forewarned,
Absolutely.
Right? And we were at least able to know where to start targeting ourselves and be a little bit more, I'd say, cognizant of what is coming. And so, I look at this is our chance to kind of look back on that year. And, there's a lot of themes history allows us to understand what happened and allows us to set ourselves up for what's coming next. It doesn't foretell what's going to happen, but it certainly helps shape what's going to happen. And so that's why I think that this question, when it's been posed to me and I think posed to you, it resonates more deeply because I think that this is the moment where we can start to put the rubber to meet the road and say, these are all the promises we've had and we've talked about it, but here's how we can move forward. And this is where the next 12 months could be if we start to take in what we have. And for those who are going to come after us, a big part of why we're doing this is because we want those who come after us to be able to move faster than we did.
Yeah.
And while humans are going to change what the actual effect will be, because humans are going to be very different and we have a different reaction to everything. It's the idea that these structures allow you the ability to navigate some of that, the bigger picture so you can navigate the humanity in your local community. So with that, that's my rant.
I don't think it's a rant. I think it's
I didn't hear a
important-
response. It's like
No,
after
I'm
you don't
lis-
interject, I get
I'm not
scared
gonna-
when you
no,
don't say anything.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think this is the landscape that we have ahead,
So,
and a lot of big questions to tackle, and we have a list.
oh, we do. And
have a
I don't know if
very-
we'll get all the way through
We're
it.
not going to get through this list. It would take us the entirety of the episode just to read the list, to be honest.
Oh, come on. It's
Do
not
we?
that bad.
Yeah, it's the truth. So I think that should we just dive in? You know,
Yeah.
like where do we want to dive in? Like,
I think
I kind of want to dive in the middle, and I say in the middle because we literally have a giant list in front of us. I sent Steve pages of notes, and then Steve sent me a text that was so big it crashed messages, and I never saw it.
I just cut and pasted it. Hang on.
With however many, I don't know, what do we got? We've got about 50 questions here that,
Oh, no.
you know, okay, no, 40 something to pose and ask about, you know, where things have been and where we're headed. And I think I kind of want to start in the middle.
Go.
With, is there a master plan to rebuild Altadena and what goals are being used? And I think,
That's the interesting question.
right, it is such, I mean, it's kind of like starting at the end, but I think we need to jump to the end for the beginning.
Well, there's a very
Because where
good
is the
friend of mine
plan?
who's an elected who always says start with the jury instructions and work backward. He always tells me, I say, Steve, give me the jury instructions, give me the bottom line. What is the master plan? I mean, I think that's what the EIFD was supposed to be, right? Like it's
Yeah.
supposed to be a master plan, but again, we don't know. We haven't been told what the master plan is, nor do we have any idea. Well, we won't be able to say anything about it because it's going to be dictated to us on high.
Right.
Now, what building on that, which I thought was another interesting theme, because the Climate Resilience District, when this fire hit, I remember all the talk in the spring when we were talking about financing and figuring out how to address this was climate resilience. You know, building back more climate resilient, building back with more climate, friendly, et cetera, et cetera. I drive around Altadena right now. All I'm seeing is wood. And I'm sitting there
Yeah.
going to myself, where was the last, I haven't heard boo about climate since 782 got through started really moving.
Yep.
And, it was all climate to get the Climate Resilience District there. But since then, have you heard anything about the
Nope.
climate? Have
We
you heard anything about
haven't.
resilient building back?
Nope.
Or are we just building back more dense and larger?
Correct. That's
Okay.
exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
I
Just
thought we were
wanted
supposed to be. I thought we were supposed to be positive on this episode.
We are.
We're trying so hard, but it is tough, and I mean that is the reality that it's not happening.
Well, I'm saying this because I say tongue in cheek, but I also think it's like how much of this, and this gets back to the trust factor. And again, the community groups that have been put in place, where they are, what they've advocated for, how they've been elevated, and where do they stand in the current environment.
Landscape. Yep.
Because community groups were a critical component of this, and how that all leads in with the philanthropic money that got cascaded around. And I know we've touched on it here, Shauna, but I mean, this is a big part of the discussion that I think has to be not investigated, I think that's the wrong word, but definitely that string needs to be pulled to kind of see how all these things are interactive. And, what one of the things we've talked about is when you look at the response that's happened, it's been a string of failures isolated. But when you put those failures together, as you always say, the trend is your friend.
Yep.
It's very clear that this is a much broader question. And so if I'm in the media and I'm looking at this is another component to it all. So, whether it's climate resilience districts, whether it's the community groups and who were elevated out of the community groups, where are they going to sit in the structure going forward? I mean, I remember somebody in one of the organizations that was looking at this question said to me, I try to do an organizational chart or some kind of chart to determine what the community groups are and where they all fit in Altadena.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I couldn't make heads or tails of it.
I know.
Can you?
I know. I love that was one of the.
And is it flooding the zone? I mean,
Right.
is this just a Trump plan? Not Trump by the administration, but
Yeah.
following the tactics.
Yeah. I honestly don't believe that. I think that it is beyond well-intentioned, but we also know where good intentions get us, which is not always where we want to be. And I love that that was one of the questions on this list of like, who's tracking all of the community orgs working on these things.
This was in the spring they asked me this question.
It ties back into this question of, is there a master plan, right? Is there any kind of like real master plan or blueprint for how we are rebuilding Altadena, since it's clearly not what we lost. We're not building what we just lost. So if we're building, you know, a new iteration of our town, you know, what does that look like? What is, especially the business districts, the commerce areas, what's being done? What is the plan? What's the vision? What's the goal? You know, we had all these visioning meetings for the San Gabriel Valley area plan. We had them prior to that for our CSD and the development of that. A lot of time and energy was put in by numerous community leaders who did incredible and important work. But all of that kind of fell to the wayside. And we're seeing that with the park, and you know, we're seeing it with the CSD and SB9. So where, you know, it does beg this question of, where is the plan? And if there is a plan, you know, can the community see that and play into it? Because this is where I do want to be really positive, actually. There is a path forward to do this. There is a way, but it has to be done, and it has to be inclusive of the community and all swaths of the community, which is what, frankly, is not happening right now, because so much work, well-intentioned, important work, is being siloed, and it's being done by these individual groups and coalitions and collections of groups in their own independent silos, and they're not talking to one another.
But maybe that is the master plan. Or are there people...
the plan is to not have a plan?
Well, maybe there is a master plan behind the plan. Again, we don't know. These are the questions that aren't being asked yet, and nor answered.
I don't think they have answers.
Well, I think there's certain groups that have more visibility on that than others.
Yeah.
Another question I've got is, you know, back to your San Gabriel Valley plan, was like, was there opposition to it? And are some of those opposition elements starting to surface here? You know, I've known in politics, I'm dealing with an issue with the VA right now, that 6 years later, they're coming back again to try to change some policy that they never should have been doing in the first place. And they got smacked down in 2019. And yet here we are, 2025, 2026, it's still there.
Yep.
These groups don't go away once they decide that they want to be a part of something. So that's something to, you know, be interesting to see the history on that as they pull that string a little bit.
It will be interesting. And where do you think it will take us?
I have no idea.
I mean, what could
That's the fun part about all this, is that there's the macro story, but then there's all these micro stories within the macro that can get really interesting really fast. So, you know.
So that to me is one of my most interesting questions, I think, to ask. What do you think is one of the other most interesting questions to ask right now? And stories to tell. It's a big list.
I know.
I put Steve on the spot.
Well, I mean, because to me, I'm going to migrate toward the federal stuff, and I'm going to migrate towards the policy. But one of the questions that we haven't, you know, the Wall Street Journal brought it up in March, and the Urban Land Institute talked about it, but financing and insurance still haven't been solved.
Right.
You know, and that, I think, is, you know, we're still sitting here and building on that. It's getting back to the federal response. You know, is this disaster playbook changing? As you pointed out earlier, FEMA is no longer acting with a director. The CDBG situation working its way through Congress. You know, is there a chance to federalize some of this? Are we going to be responsible more at the state level? What is that reaction going to look like? And how are we going to get there? I think that's something that needs to be explored too. You know, what is this? You know, this model has been growing out since Hurricane Andrew. You know, this idea of disaster relief and federal participation. Is there more flexibility, or are there more options if we looked at this from a state perspective? And as I alluded to earlier in the first episode, is this something that we can use even private, not like publicly accountable private organizations to catalyze faster and get these results faster than what we're getting right now? Mm-hmm. And maybe with more accountability and more oversight than what we're getting from our electeds. Yeah. Because quite frankly, I don't think the way Altadena is set up, accountability really isn't built into the system.
It's not. I mean, I think you made a really great point in asking, can anyone document who has emerged in leadership groups in Altadena, what they have accomplished and what they are on the record to accomplish in the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, I think that's the real key question.
That's the real question, right? There's a lot of busy work. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of press. All of that and money being spent, frankly, is a lot of these orgs have been funded with that elusive fire aid money that passed from org to org. But, what happens? And I think it goes to that question, too, that we've asked a few times also. Like what's going to change in the next year, right? How significantly does our landscape change when many of these orgs inevitably run out of that money? Like that money was enough to fund you for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, maybe up to 18 if you're lucky. But if you don't have other money lined up, and we know federal money is not coming, so if you don't have other money lined up,
well, I mean, they're going to tell everybody the federal money is coming.
Well, that's been the party line, but we
assuming
know
it
it's
gets
not.
through the next 30 days through the NDAA. You're right. You're right. The money is going to dry up, and then what?
And then what? It's I think, again, has been outlined and we've been discussing that so many of these groups have emerged, but who's actually leading them? Who's going to be accountable to the community? Are any of them even accountable to the community now? And what goals and promises are they making that they need to be held to? And I love that you raised that because, like I said, so many of these things are operating in silos. They're having conversations with little individual, niche communities and swaths of the community, but not really bridging and talking across the multiple groups that exist and coexist in the community, which is how you see like so much, bristly engagement happening, right? Like around the situation with the park. Like I think that was with Charles White Park, and frankly, even going back to Loma Alta Park, with the Charles White Park, that being so well-intended, such, really, truly good intentions, maybe not by Disney because, Disney in a lot of ways is the big bad. But certainly the Imagineers who live in our town, and many of whom lost their homes, these are good people with great ideas who want to contribute and want to help rebuild a better town. But again, those folks operating in their own silo, not talking to the other folks who were already doing this work before the fire.
But this is the other thing about...
And then here we are, getting nowhere, spinning wheels, and having this perceived, idea, this perception that, no one wants anything nice, everyone's negative, everyone's a pain in the ass. No, everyone needs to be talking. There needs to be real accountability. There needs to be real communication. There needs to be real alignment. And that, I think, is the missing piece to all of this.
But what about...
But is it deliberate?
Well, and so that's what I was really saying is like, when are we going to peel back the layer and start to get to the next layer? And,
it's an onion.
And one of the things that I found with this whole disaster thing is, one thing government does really well, or bureaucracies and organizations that want to continue to keep the game going, is distract and delay. Delay is the tactic. It's the time-worn tactic. If you wait long enough, things change. I think it's the theme
word. I think that delay is the theme.
Elongate is the other way to do it.
But I would say that delay arguably is the theme word. If we were to have a Pantone color of the year, I think Altadena's post-fire first 1 year theme word is delay, because everything has been delayed. Our insurance, the lawsuit, everything, the rebuild permits, everything is delay. And ultimately delay forces people out of the town, out of the community.
Well, no, delay allows also time for solutions to fill when you don't have the solutions. Delay wears down the opposition because the opposition gets tired and walks away. Delay allows those that are in power to remain in power and allow them to, if they don't have the answer, find the answer, build their coalitions, do what they have to do. It is a tactic that is so effective, and the only way to change it is to force the issue, which is where the media is so critical, because when you shine the light on it, when the sunlight comes in, to quote Justice Brandeis, it disinfects a lot of this delay because it's forcing the hand. Now, what's been interesting too, one of the tactics they've also used here is a tremendous amount of diversion, another D.
Yep.
Diversion, like you're talking about all these different groups and silos, that's created in a way to create that disorder. Another D. Wow, we're illiterate today.
We are.
Because by using those silos and using this disorder, it makes it look like there's no real cogent path and cogent plan, and thus allowing whatever's going on behind the scenes to happen. and allows things to continue on, because in disorder, you're like, well, I just don't know. I'm going to throw up my hands and say, it's crazy.
I wish you could see us because we're both starting
and then the other one is like, let's point at each other and, well, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. Well, I can't do it because of you. I can't do it because of you. Well, that is so.
That's politics.
But because it's an excuse not to get things done. And again, I think that we in Altadena have been, because we don't have incorporation, because we don't have a city or a town or a way to truly leverage our town, what we have here, we've been kind of thrust about and left to fend for ourselves.
Yep.
And we're, more than anything, this is flooding the zone because this noise has allowed those that want to carry out an agenda that we're not aware of, to carry it out. So that's the third question that I'd be asking is, what is that agenda? What is the plan? Sitting and waiting for it to happen is a scary thought, because it's going to be the realization that, oh, there it is. Okay, now I see it. But it's already done. And that's the problem, is that we don't have the ability to counter that momentum right now. Or we need to have more visibility to give us the stories to force that attention onto those organizations and those people that are moving an agenda that might not be as public as we would like.
Right.
Because
it's not public at all.
And the reason
it does come back to the point, to your point, and I don't want to beat the dead horse that I have been accused of beating in the past, that, we ultimately need to incorporate. We don't have a voice. We don't steer our own ship.
Or absent incorporation, we need to have participation, and we need to have visibility. We need to have accountability.
Yep. And it doesn't exist, especially when you're busy, writing and putting all of your weight behind bills that do nothing but remove accountability, 782.
Well, it's and that's one of the questions that should be asked of our electeds is, and again, why? Why would you choose that? Why would you make that decision? That decision is not you had an EIFD legislation and path already in place. You could have been implementing that in February. But
why aren't we?
Why did you
not?
If
it was an emergency, why weren't we?
And
I think it's we've talked about that a lot. For anyone who wants to go back, go listen to our episodes on 782, 797, the bills, and, what got pushed through, what didn't, why. And, I think it sounds like there may be some hope for 797 to be resurrected at some point, maybe for the next session. I certainly hope so, because we need those tools. So one way or another, we need those tools. But I think it brings us to another really great point of, which electeds will emerge as champions of various political themes, or will Altadena just be overlooked and not important?
Well, I don't think Altadena is unimportant. I think what people have to understand is why Altadena is important. I think, again, it's asking the right question. Altadena and the fire response between Altadena and the Palisades is going to be the road to 2028 and the CEO seat. I've said that from the start, and you're seeing the organizations that are emerging from the background and the plans that are emerging from the background.
Who do we think is going for that CEO seat?
I'm not going to make any predictions in public, but I think...
All right. I had my early predictions, but I think my predictions have already been shown or disproven, let's put it that way, because the folks who I thought would be going after that CEO role, in fact, I'm now aware of the other things that they're going to shift into. So I'm very curious to see who ends up in that CEO role.
Well, that's the thing about politics. Politics it's constantly changing.
Or rather, who ends up going for the CEO role, since that is no longer appointed and will now be an elected position that we will all vote on.
What the thing about that role that I think is critical is the road to that role was homelessness up until the fires hit. And this rebuild, and homelessness in the Olympics to a certain extent, but this rebuild is going to run so much of it because it's aligning so many of the different constituencies that are going to be necessary to to win that election, assuming certain, political, what's the word I'm looking for? Norms exist come 2028. That's going to be a crazy time anyway in our country because of what's happening on the broader picture, and that's going to be a presidential and an open presidential seat. I know there are people saying Trump's going to run for a third term, but I think you could see he's getting his feet kicked out from under him a lot faster than ever expected. So I don't buy at this point. So, what 2028 is going to look like and what that landscape is going to be crazy town. But I think it's also 26. I think what does Altadena act as a harbinger for as a broader conversation? And, I brought this up on my Substack, and some of my readers probably recognize this theme, but it was said to me by Mike Madrid, it's not directly to me, but Mike Madrid was mentioning that this is a chance for enterprising electeds to start to look at how we can begin to change the political conversation here in California. It's not necessarily going to turn California Republican in any way, shape, or form, because California will not become Republican, especially after Prop 50. But I think that as I wrote yesterday, does the Republican Party or Republican voters, do they start to realize that they have a big voice here if they could use it correctly? And, is there a moderation that occurs because of this? Is this a chance where we look at some of these shibboleths that have been said for so long about California and assumed, and we look at how we've been governed here in Altadena, and we say, you know what? This is a microcosm. And this gets back to a lot of the issues you've talked about with accountability and, the post-fire response and, one thing after another,
and we're still waiting for it.
And
still waiting. And how do you have trust?
You don't.
Without accountability. Exactly. You don't. How do you move forward? You can't.
And does this become a throw the bums out moment where we just say, you know what, we're just so done.
Goodbye, A.G. Banta. Goodbye, Lara.
Goodbye,
Insurance
all the
Commissioner
people that
who's terming out. Goodbye. Well, Catherine's terming out. Goodbye. And I just think, to all these guys, goodbye, good riddance.
But
don't
to
let
the
door hit you on the
machines
way out.
behind them, is this a
Correct.
moment where we say,
Enough.
you know what, they're responsive to the people who put them in power. Electeds, everyone thinks that they're these master, strategists and everything. And some of them are very bright, but a lot of them have to respond to the people who got them where they are.
Right.
And
including those who fund them.
And so start to look behind the curtain. And, it'd be nice to see some work in some of these conversations happening. There's a new paper that's coming to Los Angeles in January. It'll be very interesting to say, is this the moment where they start to look at things a little different too and say, you know what? We're coming with fresh eyes. And, maybe their political leanings might not be exactly what Los Angeles is known for. But if they come with fresh eyes, maybe they can start to chip away at some of the things that not just the right are saying, but the left are saying too. Like there are shibboleths that they're saying that they're not liking. And, that's why we're seeing the swings to the Mandamis and, the others like that, because
that was I was about to make that example, but it's true. It's like we see what Mamdani, the overwhelming support of Mamdani, especially by the people, the working class folks in New York. That was really a vote against the billionaire class, a vote that and New York is home of the billionaire class. And it just we've had enough.
But it's a continuation of what the vote against Harris and Biden was. It's neither side is getting what they really want. And so this is another interesting question is, does Altadena become an area where we could start to, I call it, those who've been reading lately, I've been calling it the wealth agenda. Everybody's talking about affordability because that's what got Trump elected in 24. That's what brought the large turnout against the Republicans in 25. And everybody knows that that's the buzzword that's driving 26. But I think the word is being used to obscure, and I don't think it's the right word. I think it's about wealth. And is Altadena a place where we can start to address some of the questions that we talked about in the last session? Forestalling foreclosures. But you can afford things if there's wealth.
Yep.
You don't necessarily get wealth by creating affordability.
No, but and this goes back to the fact that, so many people are going to lose their generational wealth. Right.
So it's about
that
as much
generational
preservation
wealth is out the door.
But it's preservation. But there's also an opportunity here. Those who have read my economic plan for Altadena, where we could potentially create a community-based ownership, where we can, distribute wealth in ways that hasn't been done before, and do it with transparency and do it with oversight. We can do this with building back and preserving that wealth and giving people the opportunity to come into homes. As much as rent control is an option, I think we need to be at a point where we're finding homes and building the ability for people to buy homes for at or cheaper than what rentals are. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that people are stuck in rent control and stuck there because they're not able to build wealth. They're just paying money to a landlord.
They're creating wealth for someone else.
And that's, what you keep hearing this week has been the average age of a person buying a home today is 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
When Biden came in 21, it was 33. Before that, in a generation ago, it was in their late 20s or mid 20s.
I was 35 and it was a miracle.
But
it was a miracle that I was able to buy my home.
But this is a problem. And, again, it's affordability. But, this is a broader question.
Well,
it's not just rent control. It's not just land use. It's we have to build and we have to there's a supply distortion. And we have to look at the things that are creating this supply distortion. I had a conversation with an elected just last week about Prop 13. And they looked at me like, are you crazy? And I said, look at New York. Millennials are outnumbering baby boomers.
Yep.
And people who have bought homes in the last 5 to 10 years are not going to see, if their property taxes were to go up, it wouldn't change that much. What's going to change what they're paying today? It's those that are the baby boomers that go back 30, 40, 50 years ago that are holding on to homes that are too big for them and limiting new families from getting in. That is a huge supply that's available today. And that's where families could be going in at a much cheaper rate. And if we had houses, we could unlock. And once we start to unlock these constraints in the supply, we could start to move people through it and create liquidity. And that's critical. And that's where we create wealth. And, I say, if you're going to do that and you're going to take away Prop 13, you got to do something else, which is lower taxes. I know California lowering income taxes. Holy shit. What are you on?
No, but we have to. Something has to give.
But if you choose
all we're
to
doing
rent,
is filtering money to the top, more and more money to the top, and more money away from the working class and what used to be. I'm not even going to say middle class, because I don't think that exists anymore. But and we're seeing now in our landscape after the fire, so many people lost all of their wealth. I'm one of them. My wealth was the equity in my home.
Yes.
I had $1 million of equity in my home because I bought it so low and then did put so much into it. That was wiped out overnight.
Yeah.
That's gone. My wealth is gone.
I can't sell my house to getting wealth out
exactly.
of it either.
That is the case now for all of our neighbors, who are in third, fourth, even fifth generation in their homes. They had inherited all of that wealth and it is gone. And, and now they're being forced out and then they stand to lose it all. And how do we get this back? I mean, these are these big questions that we have to continue to try and find to solve with it through some sort of balanced lens for the rebuild of our town. Because, we're looking at these, again, the average size of our homes was 12 to 1,500 square feet, a lot of 3-bedroom, 1-bath. We are now shifting in the rebuild, understandably, because it's costing so much to rebuild. If you're going to invest this money for there to be any ROI, for this to make any sense, for you not to be upside down entirely, for you to recoup any of that wealth that you just lost through the loss of your home in the fire, you have to build a bigger home on these lots. You almost have to get there. So if you're going to do that, and you have to have the ADU, you need to do that. So if you're going to do all of that, and now we've ushered in the densification, now we've got the higher property tax brackets, now we've got what the county, I think, has been angling at in every way, in every piece goes back to, every single thing goes back to raising the tax base for the county. But as we do all of that, we're disenfranchising entire communities of people. The renters that were forced out, forget it, they can never come back. The owners that were forced out, I don't know how they're ever coming back. How is any of this happening? It's like, how let's talk about affordability for a second. And I know I'm going to let you have your moment, Steve. Steve is chomping at the bit. But I really do want to touch on this issue of affordability because it was already had become, I don't know about what you bought for and when, Steve, but I know when I bought and what I paid. And my home was triple that. And what I bought for and paid for my home was like the max of what I could afford. That was the top of my budget. There was no more. The fact that I was able to buy my house, like I said, that was a miracle. I couldn't do it 5 years later. I wouldn't be able to do it now. I don't know how anyone is doing it. And that was when all of our homes were going for $1 million plus. They're now going to be $1.5 to $2 million plus. Who is living in Altadena?
I'm not arguing any of that. And I think this is a bigger picture. And I think that Okay. Before we go on that one, I just wanted to say, I'm thinking it's ironic as we're talking about the massive homes that are going to be going in our climate resilience district that, use much more energy because the energy efficient homes that existed that were created in the 1930s and 40s
Correct.
are now gone.
Correct.
And we're now going to,
Yep.
But it's a climate resilience district, Sean.
I cannot.
Don't
get me all riled up today.
I just had to.
My blood pressure can't handle it.
I just had to touch that one.
It's such horseshit, guys. It's the worst kind of greenwashing, right? For those who don't know the term greenwashing, it was like, when the organic movement happened, it was like putting the word all natural, which means literally nothing by the FDA. Like all natural means nothing. I could, You can
have all natural high fructose corn syrup.
Yes, correct. It's a meaningless term, but all of these companies, when things began to go organic, would put all natural on things, or put hormone free on a milk product that never ever used hormones. So like that again, it is a meaningless statement, and don't even anyhow. That's like everything that's wrong with our country. In one example,
says the person in marketing and PR.
Exactly, but that you can buy this. You shouldn't be able to buy this. It shouldn't exist. If we had a government that functioned, it should actually care for and take care of the people, and not the corporate entities that stand to profit. And that's it, because the country is one giant corporation, and we are not the executive officers being paid. That's somebody else. So anyhow,
right.
I digress.
So
that is what's happening now, is that we're seeing like another version of greenwashing through this, climate resiliency district, and like climate, yet we're not doing anything. The only thing we've heard about climate was that absolutely absurd, inane zone zero bullshit, right? Of like, oh, the bougainvillea is what burned down in our town. I cannot. Like, no, guys. I had the defensible space. The reason the town burned the way it did was the confluence of lack of response and attempts to knock down the fire. And we're not going to get into the blame for that, but that's just a reality of what happened. Plus external factors of the weather, external factor of no water, right? So there was no real response. And then on top of that, there was so much fuel. And why was there so much fuel? Because our community was built so densely. And what are we doing now? Building it back even more densely. Don't even get me started on the parking.
We won't have any green because...
Don't even get me started on the parking. Yeah, where are you even going to plant the trees? Don't be any space to plant the trees.
All right, so, this brought me to a question
about... man, I was supposed to not go negative in this episode, you guys, but this stuff bums me out. It just bums me out.
You have to ask the questions.
We have to ask the questions.
Look, you have to ask the questions, and unfortunately you have to ask the questions with a sense of rhetoric or bite, because otherwise it doesn't get answered. So here's one that I thought about. Considering both the fires were man-made, one from poor policy related to removing decommissioned power lines, and SRP, I'll give you credit, you wanted to get that bill through, and you're not wrong, and power not being shut down in the proper way, and another by not adequately extinguishing a fire, which I still think is crazy. What are we doing to address the fact both are effectively human failures instead of other contributing factors? We hear a lot about climate being the driver of it, but it wasn't climate. This was not
climate.
This is not a lightning storm that hit in the desert and then has had crazy winds.
This is a combination of just straight up ineptitude on every level, or in our case, in Altadena and for the Eaton Fire, corporate negligence. That's it.
It's human based.
Yep. And entirely, as I like to say over and over, entirely preventable. And please let's stop saying wildfire, because that is not what this was.
And so
it's what it became, but it's not what it was.
When do we do that root cause analysis? And I'm not talking like the McChrystal report, which, is designed to whitewash government. I'm talking about an investigation from a journalist or a group of journalists to look at what really caused this. And, how can we prevent this from happening to another community in the future? Lahaina was power lines. We were power lines.
Yep.
Well,
I think we know it, and it's going back to the big bad that nobody wants to address in a meaningful way, and that is that I'm broken record on a few topics. This is one that everyone is so intertwined and so deeply in bed with one another, our electeds, with our private for-profit utilities, with our unions that support our sheriff's department, our fire department, that it is to a point where there's no accountability, because no one can ask any hard questions and answer them, because you don't want any one of those pieces to collapse because you're going to go with it. It's a house of cards. So we cannot get real answers. And it would seem we can't even get real meaningful change because without dismantling the current power structure.
So
how do we do this?
So, Shauna's of the mindset, take the power back, fight the man. She's got Rage Against the Machine going in her head.
I love Rage Against the Machine.
I can already hear, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. But, which I listen to when I'm skiing down Mammoth. It's great. But, this is one of my questions is like, and again, this is another thing that I think the media should really be looking at is there another way? I mean, did we start down this path with the idea of AB 797 and having ourselves become more community driven as opposed to relying on top down? And again, I know people are going to say, wait a minute, isn't this what Trump's saying? But is there some validity to this idea that maybe we start to break down some of these power systems by creating a third path so that we're not in this opposition that you're talking about,
right.
Where, if we don't like it, let's do it ourselves. And, and those that have been reading my Substack in the last week have noticed that this is sort of a theme that I'm really looking at. I don't say we necessarily tax billionaires. Billionaires don't want to pay a tax to, and again, I think there's going to be questions on that from a legal perspective, but even if it got through, wouldn't you want to say, look, you can either pay a tax to the government or you can take that money and invest it using it through community-based options like, hey, let's rebuild a town. You got $1 billion. You can help us get there. And
yeah,
and there
we know there's the money
healthcare,
exists. The money exists.
All I'm saying is like there's another way to get there. We don't have to rely on government. We default to government because that's what we know and that's what's easy. But it doesn't have to be government to do all this. And you know what? For generations, it wasn't government.
And I think it's important to posit that by saying there's intelligent, sensitive ways to do this through private funding mechanisms, like some of those, again, that we've seen outlined in some of the legislation that was proposed. That does not mean selling to the highest bidder and slapping logos on businesses and all of this. Like, there's a way to do this. No, I know, but I think it's important for the listener to know that.
No.
When we talk about private funding, that we're not talking about, sell off the town to the highest bidders and sell it to corporations. Exactly, no. But there are absolutely other ways to get this money here,
Well, and that's the thing is that you could set it up in a way that is quasi-governmental, like, where it has accountability to the town, where you can have multiple entities doing multiple tasks, where it doesn't have to be just one single entity doing it all, because quite frankly, we've seen what that leads to. And it really does affect, if we have to hold it accountable, but it's the only game in town, it's too big to fail.
Yep.
And then what?
So I think because we have so many questions, we probably touched on about a dozen of our 40 plus. And we cannot talk for hours. Well, we can talk for hours, but we won't do that to you. Steve, what do you think this bodes or portends for the midterms next year and for our elections when we're going to see a lot of shift and change in 28? Who owns this? Who doesn't own it? Who's made or ruined by this?
Honestly, I think people are afraid of it. I mean, to be brutally honest, I don't think the electeds today truly want to own it. And I think they want to own what they can do to get there, to take care of their constituents. And I mean, and that's a multiple layer question, what a constituent is. But I really don't believe any of them want to take this on and put it on their shoulders and atlas their way through this.
Right, because it's too big and it's too...
I think it's messy.
As I say, messy and likely to fail, and you're left holding the bag.
Well, here's the other thing. Yeah, because this is the thing I try to explain to people about electeds is they spend their whole career getting to this moment. They invest in themselves more than anybody, right? Their brand is them. And so their fear, to many of them, it's more of a loss perspective than a gain perspective. You need somebody who's on the outside who doesn't give a shit, to be honest, to take this on their shoulders. And but I think the rewards...
Not someone who's getting ready to prepare to run for mayor again. I'm just saying.
I think
we need it, but we don't need it.
I think the rewards are huge. And I think whoever has the balls to do it can redefine so much, because the system is it's in a stasis right now. Look at the swings between 2020, 2024, 2025, the cycle is shortening because the electorate is saying they're not getting what they want.
Yep.
And Altadena in and of itself is a great example of exactly what's failing. And I think if somebody were to stand up and say, I got an answer. I'm going to need a little bit of time because it's going to take some time. These are complicated questions, but here's my plan. And my plan is to bring wealth. My plan is to bring accountability. And my plan is to fight for the community to see that this is done in a way that allows everybody to get something out of it, to leave with dignity. I mean, if you're going to leave you with that dignity that is so important, that's a no-brainer.
It is, but how do we get there? Because our current electeds can't seem to pull it off. So, I mean, how do we get there,
Because they have to learn how to do it, and it's teaching an old dog new tricks.
At a time when it has to be done quickly.
It's high stakes. This is a high
stakes, and it's high speed, high stakes. There's no room either for error or for hesitation. I would actually argue there is room for error.
There's not room for hesitation.
Correct. You can figure it out as you go. You can fuck it up a little bit and correct as you go. Exactly. I think that is fair and reasonable. I certainly felt that way. I know for me in the first few months after the fire, I had a lot of grace for the county because this was unprecedented. No one had a plan for what we were looking at. And they needed a few months to get their ducks in a row. But it was after that I kind of got a lot more critical, because after that it was like, okay, guys, you should be able to get your house in order at this point.
Well, I think it's a question of wanting to govern.
It's not happened.
But you have to want to govern.
Correct.
I mean, you have to want to be in that position. You have to want the pressure. It's not just accolades.
Nope.
That's
God knows they want that. We know that from all the press. I've never seen so many press ops. Good God.
But and that's the thing that's so sad about it, is that you have to want the pressure. You have to want to make that difference. History is not made by people who just want accolades. History is made by the people who come in and actually take the bull by the horns and do something.
Yep.
And not created by PR, but actually do it.
Which gets us to, looking forward, what is the real solution? And is it just incorporation? I mean, is that the only real solution, or is there another path? I'm asking that as an honest question, and we're probably not going to fully unpack it at the bottom of this episode today. But I think that still remains the question. And, I've had it, off record, even from people inside the county machine, that multiple people, that the only answer for us is to incorporate. And that's
the problem is they want to
get.
Yeah, but how do you get there?
Correct.
And how
Especially
do you do it? And I think, there are so many pieces and parts going against us. And this is why I think that back to the narratives, I think you have to be able to tell the story, and we have to pull the string. And, I tried to do it with the Substack. I've tried to do it as much as I can.
It's just I think it's a little obtuse for some, but yes, you have to, it's a little bit inside baseball for some folks who are listening or reading in this case.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but it also has to be that way, because how else do you do it? I'm not a journalist. That's why it was there to be the breadcrumbs, not to be the whole thing. But I think really what it comes down to is I think people just want a government that meets them where they are. And I think that's really what it comes down to.
It does. And
I think everybody's tired. They're fatigued.
And we are. And I mean, I swear they're counting on this. It's like we're all worn down. But I think,
But you have to fight now, because this is the most crucial time. You're running a marathon. You used to run marathons.
Yep. And I've said that repeatedly this year. This one's a marathon, not a sprint.
And
there are legs of the race that are a sprint.
But that's the funny thing.
This one's a marathon.
And I was thinking about that Prop 50 thing, and Prop 50 was a sprint, and that's why you have room to maneuver.
I actually want to wrap up on that. We didn't start this episode with kind of a roundup of news because we had such a heavy news cover in the last episode.
Are you going to make me eat my words now?
Something that came up this morning.
I still believed it was wrong philosophically.
Something that came up this morning was the fact in today's breaking news, and today is our record date is Tuesday, November 18th. But one of the things that came up was that Prop 50, as it relates to Prop 50, Texas's redistricting bill and their redistricting move that was made to increase Republican seats was just shot down and overturned.
Well,
by
it was stayed.
It was stayed by their, which means suspended by their courts, not like the Supreme Court.
No,
it is a federal court, but it's a
federal
Texas
court.
judge in the federal court.
No, so it's federal court. So it was the basic district court, and then it'll go up on appeal, and then it'll go to the SCOTUS.
It will, and then it'll go. But it's kind
But the fact is, it's on hold now, which is a tremendous blow to. I mean, the Trump administration's had a bad week. They've had a bad month. I mean, ever since November 4th, it's gotten really gnarly. And I mean,
I opened my social media the other day, and I was like, open social media. Trump, was giving Clinton a blowjob. I briefly think this is entirely plausible for 1,000 reasons that I don't want to contemplate.
Okay,
Get off social media immediately.
I'm not going there.
Stepping away.
But I would say, this is those again who read my Substack know that I was writing yesterday about Indiana giving Trump the middle finger.
Yeah.
And whether Prop 50 or not gives the Democrats the House, I still believe it was wrong. I might be wrong that maybe this might be the difference maker. It was the
Let's
third.
see.
And I'll eat my words on that. I've been wrong before.
I'm always happy to be wrong too. I think it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out because, if theirs gets shot down, what's to say that other redistricting attempts won't also be shot down, that even Prop 50 may be found to be unconstitutional and that we get shot down and that ultimately this was all just a failed effort that was nothing more than really a PR move for a particular governor who'd like to be president. Just saying.
No
just
comments.
saying.
I would just like, I just
follow the money. Or in this case, the power, because the power is money.
No, money follows power.
It's all of the above. They go together.
So all right, so that was quite the episode there, Shauna.
That's an episode.
I hope everybody's not like overwhelmed, going, "Holy shit!" I just listened to a Steve Substack.
Yes, we did do a little of that, and we'll find a way to keep it light in the next episode as a palate cleanser. I don't know how light we can be with the topics of conversation here, but we're trying. But we're going to end
People
on a
aren't
lighter.
listening to us for our levity.
That's true. We are going to wrap ourselves up on a positive note, a bright note with some things happening in the community. A little, our small business shout outs. We only have so many small businesses to shout out because so many are gone. But there are some good things happening, in particular this weekend. So this weekend, Rhythms of the Village, who, they did lose their brick and mortar shop, but they're still growing strong in the community and online. They're having their annual Village Fall Festival, which is really, it's like a celebration of culture and community. And it's a really beautiful event that I encourage everyone who can go to. That is going to be this weekend on the, Saturday, the 22nd. Is the 22nd Saturday or Sunday, Steve?
I don't know.
Steve,
I think
why
it's
doesn't
Saturday.
Steve have a calendar in front of him when I need it? It is Saturday. So make sure for our listeners I got that
I have to
right.
be at a rugby game.
So Saturday the 22nd, we've got the Village Fall Festival happening from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that's because of obviously it cannot be at Rhythms of the Village as it typically would be. It's going to be at Muir High School on Lincoln. On the same day, because the original event was postponed due to rain, the Mariposa Junction reopening is happening, and that's, multiple businesses. That's the block that includes Sideca, which is a cute little kind of retro boutique on the corner of Lake and Mariposa. You have, of course, Betsy, which has been open. You've got Miss Dragon Printing, Carciofi Stationery Shop.
We talked about this last
week.
We
did. We talked about it a couple weeks ago because we talked about the grand opening event that was supposed to be happening on this weekend, but they got rained out. So it's now on Saturday, the 22nd.
Okay.
So that's the point of mentioning it again. All these businesses are coming back for their grand reopening, which is going to be quite a big block party event this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So, come to Altadena, go to the Mariposa Junction reopening, go to the Rhythms of the Village Fall Festival, and congrats to Tyler Wells at Betsy, who just got named one of Eater's best new restaurants in America. America.
Wow.
Top new restaurants in America.
I mean, it's good, but
Betsy
wow.
made that list.
Hey.
I know.
Altadena, baby.
Yep. So
Congrats.
other than that, that's where we're at. So we'll see you on the next episode. We'll see you next time, next week. I'm Shauna. You can find me at Beautiful Altadena on Instagram, Substack, and our private community-only Facebook group. So when I say neighbors, it's if you lived here on January 7th, come join the group. If otherwise, find one of our subgroups or find us on one of our public spaces or our public page. And you can find Steve on Substack.
Oh, yeah, the Alta Policy Wonk.
Yep. He is very prolific there. And as always, if you have questions, comments, anything that you would like to hear us address on the show, by all means, send us an email, beautifulaltadenaog@gmail.com. Until next time.
Take care. Thank you.